Stop gambling with a straw when a fire hose is what saved lives. Because in a real tension pneumothorax, that beloved 14 gauge, it fails far more than you think. Welcome to Suburban Prepper, where serious preppers and survivalists sharpen skills that actually keep people breathing. Today we're going to break down why the 14 gauge myth and show you the exact gear and replacement that dramatically increase your success in needle decompression. By the end of the video, you'll know precisely why the 14 gauge often fails, what to replace it with, and how to execute with confidence at the right anatomical site for far better odds of saving a life. We're focused on pre-hospital emergency realities here, okay? We're not talking about chest tubes, hospital protocols. We're going to have a clear, field-ready approach you can integrate into your IFAK. You know, most of us were taught the same algorithm. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, 14 gauge, 8 centimeter catheter, fast in and out. It looks great in the textbooks, and you can never fail on a mannequin. But out in the field, a moving ambulance, the back of a truck, heavy clothing, body armor, adrenaline, variable anatomy. It's a different universe. What looks easy gets sabotaged by chest wall thickness, muscle, fat, and a lumen that clogs if you look at it the wrong way. On paper, the 14 gauge seems friendly, a small, flexible, portable. In reality, those exact traits become failure points. Too short, too consistently reach the pleural space, too flimsy to stay patent, and too narrow to evacuate pressurized air fast enough. Smaller is safer. You know, that sounds nice until your patient is cyanotic and your catheter kinks like a crooked noodle. Dogma is not data, and the data is brutal when lives hang in the balance. You know, there's three main reasons why the 14 gauge fails. First, the length. Adult chest walls at the classic center intercostal space, mid-clavicular point, often exceed 5 centimeters, and the catheter can rarely penetrate it, especially with muscular or larger patients. You might hear a hiss and think, got it. But a minor shift, a bunch on the litter, or a tissue recoil, and you're no longer in the pleural space. The patient tanks, and you're often wondering what went wrong. Second, the diameter. Under pressure, air wants an expressway, not a cocktail straw. A narrow 14 gauge lumen chokes on reality, chokes on the blood, the tissue, and secretions, turning your life-saving device into an obstructed plastic plug at the worst possible moment. Third is placement. Mid-clavicular spot often forces you to go through a thick pectoral layer, increasing resistance and misplacement risk. Combine insufficient length, small diameter, and a suboptimal trajectory. Those ugly real-world failures suddenly make sense. This isn't an operator problem, it's a system problem. The numbers from real systems are eye-opening. When teams stuck with the 14 gauge at the old site, success barely nudged past a coin flip. When they shifted to a longer, wider catheter placed laterally at the 5th intercostal space along the anterior axillary line, success jumped dramatically. Longer catheters reduced the need for escalation to chest tubes. That means fewer invasive procedures, fewer complications, and a faster, more reliable rescue in the pre-hospital window where time is blood and air is life. So what belongs in your kit? An 8 centimeter 10 gauge angiocath. That's right, 10 gauge. This is a grown-up tool for the grown-up problem. Length solves the access issue. Your catheter actually lives in the pleural space, not just flirting around with it. The 10 gauge lumen creates a real airflow path that dumps pressure fast and keeps flowing, even when blood or tissue is in the mix. And that added rigidity reduces kinking during transport, packaging, and movement. Pair that with the 5th intercostal space at the anterior axillary line, a thinner soft tissue corridor with safer anatomy, and you've just upgraded from maybe to much more likely. Gear is half the battle. Execution is the other half. If you have breath sounds, clear the site quickly so you can landmark evenly. Identify the fifth intercostal space at the anterior axillary line and advance just over the superior edge of the rib to avoid the neurovascular bundle. Feel that distinct give as you enter the pleural space. Listen for that rush of air, then advance the catheter and stabilize at the hub while withdrawing the needle. Reassess repeatedly. Check the breath sounds, the rise of the chest, the oxygen sats, and don't miss it. Your blood pressure. A climbing systolic is your scoreboard. Secure it with transparent dressing so you can constantly confirm patency, spot kinks, and maintain function in transport. Old versus new is stark. Listen, short, flimsy, midline, narrow versus longer, wider, lateral, and rigid enough to stay open when the world is bouncing. This is not about being trendy. It's about deleting preventable failure from your workflow. One change in gear and one change in sight, and you can move from hoping to knowing. If this resonates, if you felt like sinking gut wrench when you have a 14 gauge didn't deliver, you're not alone. Drop your experiences, your questions, or push back in the comments below. We're all here to get sharper, not to bow to tradition. And if you want an exacting packing list to upgrade your kit right away, well, I've got something for you. Switching to a longer, wider catheter at the lateral site is not a nice to have, it's a survival multiplier. Picture the patient with distended neck veins, the tracheal shift, the following pressures, and you got seconds. With the right catheter and the right target, you give them that rush of air, that release of pressure, that second chance. The 14 gauge had its era. Your patient deserves better. Make the upgrade. Drill the steps and become the person who delivers it when there's chaos. Comment below with your toughest decompression call. What worked, what didn't, and what you do different. Now go on to suburbanprepper.com and download the free prepper checklist to harden your entire medical kit and not just your decompression game. Also, you can get my book, Suburban Advanced Medical Care. It's on my website and link below too. And if you found value here, follow, share, and share this with your team so your whole crew can level up their saving game. Here's a payoff. With an 8 centimeter, 10 gauge catheter at the fifth intercostal space, anterior axillary line, you dramatically increase your odds of successful decompression right there in the field. You'll shorten time to relief, reduce escalation to more invasive procedures, and raise your true save probability when the patients are circling the drain. For those ready to push further, standardize your kit with a 10 gauge, train your landmarks under stress, and run scenario reps that include movement, noise, and gloves on fine motor, because that's the world you'll be operating in. Next up, we'll break down how to build a modular thoracic kit that deploys in 20 seconds, even in the dark, without fumbling. Everything we covered comes down to this: length, lumen, lateral placement. That trio transforms decompression from a coin toss into a reliable intervention. Drill it, own it, and make sure you put that in your muscle memory today. One item to execute now: replace every 14 gauge decompression catheter in your kit with an 8 centimeter 10 gauge and relabel your chest kit with a new landmark so there's zero hesitation under pressure. Upgrade your kit, upgrade your outcomes, and set a new standard for your team. This is how preppers become protectors, by ditching myths, embracing the evidence, and practicing until performance is automatic. I want you to subscribe and hit the hype button. This is survival. This is resilience. This is Suburban Prepper. Bleeding isn't just about a priority. It's the first fight in any trauma call.